Hello again, EDF friends. Welcome back to our firing range where we are testing all the weapon types in EDF 5. We're on Air Raider again, and we took a little break for the DLC weapons, but we're back to Air Raider. We're doing the bombing plans and the missiles today. I wanted to start out here in the field just to show something really quick to keep in mind when you're selecting bombing plans. So, you'll notice for bombing plans, whether it be the bombing or the strafe plans where it's machine gun fire, it'll be like 100 by 2 or 150 by 4 or 200 by 4 or whatever it is. Pretty much what you're looking at is when it says like 100 or 150 or 200, that's how long the plan will be. Same with the bombing plan. If it says like 40, that means it's going to be a lot shorter than say like 100 strafe plan. So you can kind of judge what kind of a bombing plan you want by how much of a coverage area that you need. So for example, this particular strafe plan, I had the KM6 4X1. This thing does let's see, it does 2.5 million damage. So let me throw this on my Napalm here. So just keep in mind that any given spot on this track is not going to get 2.5 million damage. It's just going to be a fraction. Like this only did about 80,000 damage to my Napalm here. So you have to keep that in mind. So you don't necessarily want the longest bombing plans because that means that damage at 2.5 million is going to be spread way out. Whereas, a more narrow bombing plan that has like 40 long, that's going to be a lot more damage in a concentrated area. So just something to keep in mind when you're trying to pick bombing plans. I still use strafe plans a lot. It's just you want to make sure that you're taking into account, do you want a long range, a long running bombing plan or a short one? So let's go ahead and get started on the bombing plan area here. I already covered the DLC, so I'm not going to cover the level 100 weapons in this video, but let's start with the level 87 here, the Phobos, which is, I would argue, probably the best, or at least in the top 2 of the bombing plans, or air raids in general, because this thing does 660,000 damage, but it only costs 1,153 points maxed out, which is not very much at all. And the reason why this outclasses, the KM6, for example, this one up here, which does 2.5 million damage, is because this damage is a lot more concentrated. It's because it's only 20 bombs long and 4 wide, it's going to hit a lot more concentrated damage into one smaller area than, say, for this, where it's going to be a long runner that does a lot of damage spread out. So this thing is very good, it's very useful, and definitely probably one of the best in my opinion, at least. It has a 20-meter blast for each of those bombs that it drops, and like I said, it drops 20 bombs in 4 rows. It's like a V pattern. So I'll take one of those. And then the next one up, as I said, the KM6X4 is it does 2.5 million damage. Very cheap, 615 points. So it's half the points of this thing. So you get this thing up an awful lot. That's the benefit usually of the strafe plans, is they're always going to be up, and therefore you can use them a lot more often. And it's better for like spread out enemies, wasps, drones, stuff like that. Very, very good. Like I said, I use this a lot, and the reason I like this particular one is because this one throws it so that I'll show you out in the actual field when I take these and test them out, but it actually throws it right on top of you so that it covers behind you and in front of you, which is very beneficial, which I'll explain a little bit more later. And then I'll take one of those, and then the next one I want to show is the level 84, which is a Napalm, which is new this time around to EDF, which is a very... At first I didn't think too much of it, because it only does 204,000 damage total. And it has a 15-meter blast. And it's pretty expensive. It's 1,845 points. So it's almost double the Phobos. But the Napalm lasts for 60 seconds. And an easy way to tell if it's Napalm or not is, it's like if you don't speak Japanese and you're playing the Japanese version, is all these bombing plans have... how many rows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. All of them have 5 rows, except the fire ones have 6 rows, which the blast row tells you how long the napalm lasts. So this one's 60 seconds, 5 rows, 5 rows, 5 rows, 5 rows, 6 rows. This one says 40 seconds, it lasts 40 seconds. So this is an easy way to remember which one's which. So I'll take one of these fires. Like I was saying before, the fire I wasn't too hot on it at the beginning, but the more I use it, the more I'm impressed with it because it's good crowd control. And it may not be the most damage, and that's not what it's used for necessarily. It's more of like placing a firewall in front of you for fast charging enemies, such as, you know, golds if you want to stop them, or if you want to stop greens, of course, or even like dragons, or not dragons, but the tadpoles this time around. They're flying towards you. Can be useful when they land into the fire. But let's pick a mission here that would be good. There's one mission where you're overlooking. Yeah, this one right here. We're overlooking a bunch of frogs that are in the field. This could be a good one to use it on. First, we're going to start with the Phobos, which is, like I said, one of my favorites. The reason the Strafe plan used to be so good in the previous game, or still is because if you have people out there fighting, like if you have people out there fighting the ants down there, it's more beneficial to use a Strafe plan because you're not going to damage your friends as much. Whereas a bombing plan, you know, your friends are going to have to make sure to get out of the way or they're in trouble. So here's a Phobos. It's like a V pattern, which, like I said, is very nice because it's more concentrated damage, especially if you put like this, you know, the blue arrow part, you know, right on the center of an area. It's going to hit, you know, a lot more bombs. But as you can see, you can cover a larger section right here, and it's pretty good. And it drops pretty fast too for being a bombing plan. So yeah, that's a thing right there. just killed everything, and then you get it back up is the crazy thing about it. So let's go ahead and restart now and do the next one. Alright, the next one is the Strafe plan. And as I said earlier, it's nice because it drops in front of you and behind you. As you can see, as I pull further away, you can see how it drops right behind you, in front of you. So the benefit of that is you can just drop it right at your feet and not have to worry about aiming it necessarily. Like, you can just look in the direction you want it to aim and then just drop it, and it covers everything around you instead of having to, you know, like the 5X, which I'll show later, you have to actually move forward to hit the enemies, so it takes time to place that one. But yeah, if you want to cancel an air raid that you're trying to pull out, just while you're holding the trigger, just press the change weapon button and let go of the trigger, and then it'll cancel it, so you don't have to worry about, you know, wasting it if you didn't want to throw it then. Let's go ahead and throw this thing. And if you're inside the middle of this, you can just try and stand right here in the gap for a Strafe plan, and you'll be safe. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But as you can see, I didn't kill nearly as many enemies with the Strafe plan that does 2.4 million. But you know, I have it up still, so it's, like I said, it's very useful still. And I really like this plan, but I think the bombing one is pretty strong. Alright, now let's restart and do the fire one. And then this fire one is also where it drops behind you, in front of you, but you can make like a wall of fire. So say I want to put a wall right here to block us a little bit from these ants. So once this fire's down, I'll go ahead and pull them with my Strafe plan. And it can be useful to, like I said, to block enemies from coming in. And it'll last, you know, a minute, so it's pretty. I don't want to kill them all with that. Let's go ahead and pull them with this. So pretty useful. And you can stand right up next to that fire too, and stay in the fire, and you're relatively safe because it doesn't hurt too much, because it does damage over time. So like if you have a bunch of greens coming in, you can always just stand by the fire and just let the greens run into the fire and kill themselves. But as you can see, it stops the enemies, which is the point of what you want, to use it as a wall and not necessarily as killing things. Although it will do that too, of course. So let's go ahead and go back. The next one I want to show is a KM6. It's a very cheap one long line of KM6. It only costs 261 points, so dirt cheap. You could probably get it with like four or five kills, I would guess, to get it back up. But the problem is, the negative of it is it's 200 by 1x. So you know that 200 is the longest air raid in this game. Whereas, you know, the 40 is short, 150 is a little bit shorter, and then there's also a 100, I think. Yeah, 100 by 5, so it's even shorter. But this is one long line. You can pretty much almost always have it up. It does 840,000 damage, but of course that is in a very long line, so you're not going to expect that to you know, land 840,000 on one target. The next one I want to show is level 61. So the newest air raid that they added with the 102, I thought it was unique to this game, but actually it wasn't. I just never used it in the past. There's a level 61 version of that same thing. Pretty much what it is like cluster bombs. It's like little tiny 10-meter blast grenades or bombs that it drops. This one does 600,000 damage, so a lot for level 61. It costs more. It's 1,922 points, so it's a higher. It's more expensive, but also it does take longer time to call in than the other bombing plans, which is the reason I don't really care for those as much. And then there's also a very unique KM6 or Strafe plan, which is level 48. And this thing is, it's a 9x Strafe plan. It's like a big star. And this thing is very useful on the levels that it's relevant on for level 48. So I definitely recommend it if you are playing on like hard or hardest, where you can have it available. This thing does 585,000 damage, which is a lot for that level. And it's 1,538 points, so it's average points, a little bit above the Phobos, but very high damage, and it hits a lot of targets. It's very good. I'll show you here as I call it out. So let's go ahead and play another mission here. I think that's one of the best missions to actually see on a group of enemies. Trying to think if there's anything else that's good. Where, you know, like where you spawn in, you see a bunch of enemies, which is what I would prefer. Let's just go with that, I think. Yeah, that one's not very good either. Let's just stay with that mission. I think that's a good one, because you're staying on a roof too, which is nice to see. So the KM6, the one line, I don't know if I use it too much, because the KM6 X4, the one I showed at the beginning, the one that has like the shoots in front of you and before you, that's only 615 points. So for double the points, you have a smaller, more compact strafe plan that has 4 lines instead of 1. So I think this thing needs to be actually reduced in points, or I guess probably the more fair thing to do would be to increase the points on the 4X strafe plan, because that thing is a little bit too cheap. But as you can see, it's one long, really long line, and I would say probably the best use for it is just like if you see something, instead of like aiming at it, you just look at what you want to hit and just tap the trigger, and it'll pretty much shoot a line in front of you. It's almost like just shooting a bunch of little tiny lines in front of you. But as you can see, it's already up, and I can just keep doing this. The negative is that you have to wait till the strafe plan is done shooting before you can do it again, but you know, it's a decent damage. It's not like it's terrible damage. Each shot is, I think, 3,000 or something. Let me go ahead and restart now. Do the next one. So I don't use that one too much. And this cluster bomb, like I said, I never have used before actually, but this is like similar to the one that they released in the DLC. It does a lot of damage though. That's the thing. Being small grenades, you're gonna have a lot more compact damage, even though it's a pretty long air raid. So pretty high burst damage, I would say. It's not terrible. Not too bad for being level 60 on an Inferno mission. And you almost have it up, so it's not terrible. But I don't really use it too much because it takes a long time to call in, unfortunately, compared to the other ones. And then this is a really cool one. This is like a big star, really cool. And because it throws right on top of you, which I like, you can just tap the trigger and it'll just throw it. So if you want to hit something, everything around you, and you're relatively safe because you can always stand in between the gaps, then you just tap the trigger and it'll just cover everything around you. Or of course you can aim it out here, but I'm gonna go ahead and aim it out here. But it's not too hard to get out of the fire of that thing, and you can just keep spamming it. And of course it is weaker because it is level 48. It's not gonna, but it does 585,000 damage, so pretty good for lower levels. So I'm very happy with that weapon, honestly. And I was wondering if they were gonna make a higher level version of that, but they don't. So as far as, I think that's everything for the bombing plans. Yeah, that's everything for the bombing plans. As far as my recommendations, just in my opinion, like I said, obviously the Phobos, if you're going to use a bombing plan, this is definitely the one to go on Inferno. But I really like the strafe plans a lot. I probably tend to use them most because of how fast they call in. the bombing plans, at least the ones that aren't the Phobos, take longer to call in. Like this, where's a good one? Like this one, for example, takes a while to call in. It's a short though. It's a short burst damage, which is nice. It's only 12 long, but bombing plans seem to take longer than the strafe plans. But I like the 4X strafe plan an awful lot if I'm trying to cover a lot of area. If I'm trying to cover a more smaller area, then I really recommend the KM6 X5 here, level 75, because it's shorter because it's only 100 long, and it's wider because it's 5 wide. So therefore, you're going to get a lot more damage on a smaller target, which is usually what you're going to use anyway. So a smaller target. So I really recommend those two for sure. And of course, you're playing on lower difficulties. The 9X is just really great. But I really don't use the 1X too much, the KM6 1X, with just one line. I like to fire, I'm using it more so, but it's more niche thing, or if you're gonna try to make a wall of fire to block, I would take it, but just for damage I wouldn't really necessarily take it too much. And the normal bombing plans I don't take too much either, just because, like I said, of how long they take to call in. Usually enemies are charging you, and it's safer to throw a KM6 on yourself than a bombing plan. So, but overall, very high damage and very cheap costing air raids this time around, so I think they're really strong, and maybe a little bit too strong in my opinion, but anyway, let's move on to the missiles. There is only 3 missiles to cover, so I can take them all out in one time. There's one big Tempest shot again, which is like one big NASA space shuttle you call in, and this one does 480,000 damage, 100-meter blast, and only 1,440 points. Which is ridiculous. Actually, no, that's not the points. That's the range I have listed here. The points are higher than that. Let me quickly look that up really quick to get the right points on that, because I want to make sure. Because yeah, that 1,440 points is way too low for that. Okay. I'm gonna check up on the website really quick. But anyway, this Tempest is absolutely ridiculous. I think they went a little bit too excessive on the damage this time around, because when you can one-shot anchors, I think that's just a little bit too much. Because I was playing on Inferno, a DLC mission, and there's just a bunch of anchors in a row, and you can call in a Tempest on those and destroy those anchors in one shot, and I think that's just ridiculous. This is too much damage. So my preference, I think it should have been more like 200,000, because in the first game, actually I think it was 100,000 was the max missile, whereas this time around it's 5 times more, which I think is I think the enemies have more health in this game, sure, but I think that it's a little excessive. Okay. The actual points are 3691, so that makes more sense. I mean, it is high damage, but also it is, high to cost it to call it back in again. So that's one positive, I guess. It's not that easy to call back in, but I really think 500k or close to 480,000 is just a little bit too much for a 100-meter blast as well. So absolutely ridiculous. This thing is very broken, very strong. So yes, very good. And then there's the coastal missiles still. The benefit of these are, for one, they reload, so that's very nice. But the benefit of the coastal missiles over the Ionics is these things reload very fast, only 38.4 seconds to reload. It does 72,000 damage total in a 30-meter blast, and it has 6 missiles. Like I said, the negative of these missiles are they slow moving though. So you fast reload but slow moving, and whereas the Ionic, they call in very fast. They land very fast, but they take a long time to reload. So the max is 92.3 second reload. It does 162,000 damage, but the reload is definitely a negative of this thing. It has 45 missiles. So let's take one of each of these. ETS, coastal missiles, and then 45. Okay. I would say out of all these, I'd probably use the Ionic the most, or the Tempest, depending on the situation. I don't use the coastal missiles too much, but to be fair, ever since I saw how quickly they reload, I'm definitely rethinking that. I just don't like how slow they come in, but to be fair, as I covered in our video, you don't have to have the laser on the target the entire time. So like for example, ATS. I'm going to just go and call it in. It takes a long time to call this thing in. But once I call it in, you know, I'm free to do whatever I want. I don't have to use the laser. I can switch weapons, I can do something else, call another air raid, call a vehicle out or whatever. Usually I wait about 15 seconds before I start aiming this thing because you want to make sure it gets high up in the air. Once you see red, you also can know that it's ready to go. And then you just aim where you want it to go, and then you can let go because it's aiming there. It's not going to move unless you re-aim it again. So yeah, it does anything it touches, it definitely kills. So pretty crazy. But yeah, that's a pretty big missile. Let me go ahead and call that in one more time because I want to show how you can actually change directions of it in the air too really quickly. Like I said, you don't want to hold the laser actually right now because if anything that might have a chance for it to hit a building, because if it comes in from over there and it flies low, it might hit that building right there and then it automatically, you know, it'll blow up and be a waste. Whereas if I wait now where it's high in the air, now I can call it in, and then actually because it was going so far away I have to hold it a little bit longer because it aims. Yeah. So now you can aim it. You can change directions of it. You can really change it in a fast direction, you know, which is kind of cool. But once you let go, that's where it's going to land. It hit a building on the way, but yeah. So let's go ahead and restart here now, and let's do the other ones. And same idea with the coastal missiles. You call it in, and you want to probably do something for a while because these coastal missiles are going to launch into the air. It's usually random which side they launch in the air, but there they go. And you can wait till they're all in the air before you start guiding them. And then once you guide them, you can let go because the last place, because pretty much what you're doing is you're changing directions of them in the air. So once they actually turn around and head the direction you have the laser on, then you can let go because they're not going to change direction until you move it again and you know, call it out, you know, move the laser somewhere else. So I guess I still had one in the air. That's the problem. It won't reload until they're all landed, so you have to make sure they're all landed before they'll start reloading. Of course, you can just look at the reload bar to see when they're actually starting to reload. So, but that is one negative of them. Let me call them out again. It takes a while for them to actually land on target, and they are a little bit slower moving. All right, there they go. They're not necessarily ridiculously slow, but they are decently slow compared to Ionic, which you'll see here in a moment. But I love the reload though, so like I said, I might actually start using them more often, might start messing with them more. So Ionic now. And once again, same idea. I like to use these almost like as needed basis. Like what I'll do is I'll wait, you know, I'll call them in and wait a little bit, and then once there are quite a few of them in the air, I'll just go ahead and aim on something I want to attack, and then I'll just let go. And then I'll go, let's say, well, I want to attack this other frog. Well, let's aim the other ones over here. Take another pause, you know, save them for more for later, and then use some more, you know, right here. I need them. I mean, you can't wait forever, but you can wait an awful long time to call in when you need them. So like that way you get more of them land at once. Whereas like I'll go ahead and restart and show us again. Whereas like say if I don't pause there in between each landing, it'll just be like one missile at a time landing. So like say if I want to kill this frog, and I just hold the missile here, the whole time, hold the laser the entire time, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, it's gonna be spaced out like that the entire time. Whereas if I wait a little bit in between each calling, so I call it in, wait a little bit, wait till I get some missiles in the air, then I can land like 6 of them really fast on the target, you know, like that, and then move on to another target, land 6 of them really fast on a target, and then move to another target. That's, I kind of like to call them in that way. And then, you know, just save them for when you need them for a little bit. You know, you have a little bit of time to work with. So there you go, call some more in. And it's like really high burst damage that way. Because if you just use one at a time, then it's going to be slow damage. Sometimes it's useful to do slow damage, but I think most of the time it's good to use that burst damage. So yeah, I think the missiles are very good this time. I'm very happy with them, and I definitely use them quite a bit in my loadouts. especially the Ionics. So, and ATS if you have an opportunity to call in something, if you have enough time to call in a big missile, but usually you don't always have that time, so this could be a little bit more useful. The only negative is the reload time, of course, but you can get by it by doing the coastal missiles. So yeah, overall these are very strong sections, and I almost always take something from this section, and then sometimes the missiles, sometimes this other section, which we'll cover next time. But yeah, next time we're going to be on to the satellite blasters and the Strafe falls, and then the Olympic guns. So once again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.